at 11:30 p.m., I guess. So nighttime, definitely. But very excited to welcome everyone to this first call, the first Asia call for the movement on Asia time zones. I'm Gunjan Veda. I'm Senior Advisor with the Movement for Community-Led Development. And we'll learn more about the movement in a bit. But the movement was launched in 2015, and we've been having monthly calls really at the global level for a long time, where we see participants from Africa, Latin America, Europe, US, and everywhere. We've had some people coming in from Asia, but we've increasingly been told how it's really not a good time for Asia because it's either late evening or night for Asia. And so we decided that it really needed an Asia call, which happened in the Asia time zones. So that's why here we are. We are also very excited that we have two remarkable organizations who have been the front runners of community-led development in Asia presenting and sharing with us today. So a few weeks ago, we actually had a call with a group of people, and I think we had people from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh on that call. And we asked them, what would you like an Asia MCLD call to do? And what everybody talked about was the need to begin by sharing experiences, by hearing what other organizations are doing and sharing what they have been doing. So here we are. John, can we move to the agenda screen, please? Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to start with a brief introduction to what is this movement. It is probably new to a lot of people on this call. So John Coonrod, who is the Executive Vice President of the Hunger Project, but is the co-founder of the movement and the global coordinator of the movement, is going to tell us a little more about what this movement is. Then we'll hear from BRAC and the Sarvodaya Shramadana Movement. We'll have time for discussion and question answers. But then we're going to move into a brainstorming session on what do we want to do with this MCLD Asia call? Where do we want to take it? What's going to be most useful? For people who are new to the movement calls are really, they're not designed as webinars. They're not designed as, places where people just come and present. They're really designed as engagement exercises. So the idea is that we learn together, we create together, we strategize together, we build together. So the calls are really what the participants here make of it. So we invite all of you to, to actively share and engage, put your questions. And since most of us are probably new to each other, so maybe begin by introducing yourselves in the chat box. We had a tradition in the movement, I remember 2 years ago when I started joining the calls, that everybody began the calls by introducing themselves. Unfortunately, the movement calls have become so big now that we don't have time for those introductions, but it's nice to know who's in the room. So please use the chat box to introduce yourselves, where you're calling in from, what got you here, why are you interested in it? And then as we move forward, as you have questions, as you have reflections, as you have thoughts, please use the chat box. We monitor it very actively. And I'm sure everybody else would be interested in seeing what you have to say as well. So without further ado then, John, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gunjan. And I first want to thank all of you because what little I have learned in my lifetime, I've really learned from pioneers in community development in Asia. This is my favorite photograph of all time. This includes the founders of our two speaker organizations today, Dr. A.T. Aryaratna and Dr. Fazli Abed, along with Dr. Mabella Role and Chandi Pradhan Bhatt and Ilabat, all of whom, when I met them here in 1983, were already Magsaysay Award winners. So the world has really been inspired by a lot of the pioneering work in the work of community development that has come out of Asia. Then it all led to this big event in 2015 at the United Nations, where the world community took on very ambitious goals, the Sustainable Development Goals for the year 2030. But the real question is, what would those goals and targets really mean to people living in extreme poverty, people carving out livelihoods for their families on often marginal land with very little access to public services? What would those goals mean to them? And so the movement for community-led development was launched on that day, the day at the United Nations when the Sustainable Development Goals were launched. And we recognized that at least 12 of those SDGs required integrated local strategies at the community level. There's no way to improve health and nutrition if you don't have clean water, if you don't have nutrition education, if you don't have income, if you don't have responsive governance. So all of these things have to happen in a community reliably and responsibly. And so we set these 5 goals: voice and agency for women, youth, and marginalized groups; adequate community finance, and by that we mean at least a 20% fair share of public resources at the community level, at the sub-district level; good local governance, by that we include public forums and democratic elections and social accountability and all those things that connect people's voice to their government; quality public services; and resilience, which is a community attribute. The world will only be resilient when there are resilient communities everywhere. We have, in those green countries, we have national chapters of this movement of people working towards those goals. And in the orange countries, we have people who are participating and looking at starting national chapters. We also have 72 international organizations, including our 2 speaker organizations. Both BRAC and Sarvodaya are multinational organizations. But one of the big roles of our international members is to really support work in each country chapter as civil society comes together and works towards those goals. This is our theory of change. If you start over here, you'll see the formation of these national chapters. And we'll speak in a moment about gathering evidence on community-led development. But they create a shared agenda, stay in constant touch with one another, and then they form partnerships to advocate for national policies that would support communities in development, decentralization, and devolution. And they also form partnerships to facilitate community-led development at larger scale, to produce more and more examples of this success. So if those 2 things converge, better policies and lots of success stories, then that should produce real national level strategies that are capable of actually achieving these ambitious sustainable development goals. So that's really the 2 thrusts of our work. Now, I'm excited that Scott's with us. He has worked with countries as they moved through this pathway to national scale of having CSO-led projects like many of us have been involved in, and then getting the government's interest in that approach and doing larger scale pilots. I'm told the larger scale pilot funded by the World Bank in Indonesia was an $80 million project, bigger than any civil society group could do. And then it became a national budget item, and I'm told it's a $7 billion a year line item now in Indonesia's national government. That's the kind of pathway we're hoping the movement can help move towards in as many countries as possible. One thing we do to support that effort, Gunjan leads our work, and Scott advises it, in collaborative research to really understand and assess the quality of community-led development around the world. We have an assessment tool in both spreadsheet form and in a mobile form that people can, that people can use to assess the quality of their CLD programs. We have a big push around COVID adaptation to community-led development, and that's going to be a very big issue continuing through this year, as you all know. We have a newsletter, a website, and we use this hashtag shift the power to shift the power from top-down, central siloed projects to real long-term change processes led by the communities themselves. So we want this is a chance for your leadership to hopefully have national, regional, and international impact by all of us working together. So with that, I will stop sharing. And Gunjan, you can introduce Shashwati.
Yes, thank you, John. And if anyone has questions about the movement, I really do hope you have a lot of questions. Please put them in the chat box. And we will come back to a discussion in the second half later about the movement and what it means. Also, going forward in these calls, we will try in every call to introduce one aspect of the movement and talk a little more about it, the national chapters of the movement. But for now, I'm very excited to introduce Sarvodaya Biplav, who is the program head for the Community Empowerment Program at BRAC. BRAC really needs no introduction, so I am actually going to hand it over to you, Sarvodaya.
Thank you, Gunjan and John. Good morning again, everyone. And it is my privilege to be here today and representing BRAC in this global platform. So as Gunjan said, my name is Sarvodaya Biplav. This is a Bangla word, and I work as a program head in Community Empowerment Program in BRAC. And you all have heard the name of BRAC, I believe. BRAC is one of the largest development organizations in the world. It is a homegrown institution in Bangladesh that established in 1972, immediate after the independence of Bangladesh. And now it operates in 11 countries worldwide, including Africa and Caribbean region. So that's very briefly about BRAC. Let me share the screen with you first. Just a minute. Where is that? Okay. Yeah, I hope you can see the
Yes, we see it, although we don't see it full screen yet. So if you want to hit
this is taking a bit time to go to, yeah. No,
there you go. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So if I come to the Community Empowerment Program, Community Empowerment Program is one of the flagship program of BRAC that operates in 54 districts out of 64 in Bangladesh. In its inception in 1998, it had a different name basically, that was Social Development Program. And over the time, it has evolved further, and now it is the Community Empowerment Program since 2010, and we call it CEP in short. Definitely, CEP aims to empower the community by strengthening their social capital, that is their human, social, and political assets, in order to raise awareness about their rights, capacitate them to claim their entitlements, and prevent exploitation. So now, if I try to show you the model at a glance, what CEP would look like, then it will look like this slide. And CEP has three major pillars in its approach. And one is institution building, and another one is strengthening local governance and stop violence initiatives. I will go very briefly one by one. Then later on, I will have the opportunity to elaborate a bit more. In institution building pillar, under this umbrella, what we do, um, we have like community platforms named Polli Samaj. Polli Samaj is Bangla word, like the Polli is the village society kind of, if I translate it, where the poor people comes together and raise their united voice to ensure access to resources and make collective actions for change in their community. It also plays a catalyst role to initiate changes within their community. And the next pillar is strengthening local governance. And under this pillar, we work in both demand side and supply side. In the supply end, what we do, we work with the local government representatives to build their capacity in order to promote proper, responsive, gender sensitive, and accountable service delivery. In addition to that, we also make a special effort to build the capacity of the elected women representative locally by creating elected women's forum where they can share their learnings and experiences. On the other hand, in the demand side, we facilitate the engagement of the community leaders, that is definitely the Polish Samaj members, in different local power structures, including school committees and many other local committees, along with the local government subcommittees. CP has a comprehensive approach to address the violence against women that falls under the pillar 3 stop violence initiatives, and it covers three main aspects of violence against women. That is prevention, response, and rehabilitation. We have a special initiative here under this pillar that is providing psychosocial support to the violence survivors by creating monobandhu. This is a Bangla word and which can be translated as the friend close to the heart. So I am not elaborating it here. I will have opportunity later on to talk a bit more about this initiative because it's kind of very, what should I say? It's close to our heart as well. Yeah, it's a very important tool in our program. And apart from these three pillars, CP also implements two other supportive components across the board, namely access to information. Under that component, along with many other tools for awareness raising, information dissemination, we have very strong two tools, namely popular theater and community radio. And another cross-cutting component is networking and linkages, where we build a relationship with the service providers, local service providers, and other influential stakeholders. This is at a glance the model or the approach, whatever we call a community empowerment program. Now, if I try to go one by one pillar and elaborate a bit more, here under the institution building component or pillar, we can see in the slide that we tried to put the structure of the Polish Samaj, that is the institution that we are referring to. What we do here, or what is the structure of Polish Samaj? This is basically a ward level arrangements, because ward is the lowest tier of the administrative structure of Bangladesh government. To start from there and gradually go upwards, like from ward to union to Jilla district level. So in a ward, we have 50 to 55 representatives from the rural community and especially women. And It has also 11 members decision-making body, including president, secretary, and cashier. Cashier kind of account who take care of the accounts of the groups. And we have 12,487 Polish Samaj altogether, because we work in 54 districts in Bangladesh. It's huge. And uh, you can see the number, how many members we have. It's really big. Um, uh, Definitely, we cannot cover all the 64 countries. Still, we have haven't worked yet in the hilly areas of Bangladesh. There are different challenges and some other regions. What is the objective of having this pillar in our program? As I said earlier, that the main objective of the Polish Samaj is to strengthening leadership quality among the women, especially, and who are the Polish Samaj members, so that they can raise their voices, claim their rights, build solidarity among themselves, and prevent exploitation. And to make them able to actively participate in power structure, to influence decisions and raise voices against discriminatory practices, and definitely to support violence survivors and mobilize local resources and enhance linkages with the local institutions, service providers, and other influential stakeholders. In brief, this is our institution building component. Now, it comes to the strengthening local governance pillar. And the objective is very straightforward and very focused under this pillar. Um, as I said earlier, we work in demand side and supply side as well. So we work with the local government representatives and try to make them responsive to the needs of the poor, especially for the women. And try to ensure that the local government are more accountable in promoting women rights and violence against women, and make violence against women community. And to increase community participation, this is from the supply side, demand side basically, increase community participation and improve service delivery by the local government institutions. And what are the interventions in this pillar? The interventions are like build the capacity of the local government representatives, make them aware about their responsibilities, and try to make them pro-poor and pro-women. And there are certain committees in the local government structure, such as standing committees, like issue-based standing committees, possibility program, and so on. So CEP works for making them like more functional, and ensure the community participation in different activities of the local government, such as the open budget discussion kind of activities. CP also facilitates social accountability tools, for example, public hearing, community scorecard, workshops, kind of things, and make special effort to build or to enhance social cohesion in the conflict-prone areas by engaging Polish Samaj, youth group, civil society members, and local government institutions. And of course, we also advocate for proper and women-friendly local government, that I have said already. Under the Stop Violence initiatives, as you can say, that we work from 3 different aspects to stop violence in the community. That is prevention, response, and rehabilitation. In prevention, what we do, definitely we try to raise awareness, and we disseminate awareness messages for myth busting, and also do behavioral change communication with the community members and others. We try to engage men and voices from that community in this initiative, and we work for activation and strengthening of the local mechanisms for stop violence against women. And of course, we try to help the survivors to be independent, economically independent, and link them with the IGA initiatives available in at that community level. Under the response component, what we do, we encourage proactive engagement for identification and reporting of violence incidents of that community. And we arrange emergency medical support and legal aid services. We provide, and in many cases, we refer the survivors for the psychosocial counseling. We have our own arrangement, and we also refer to the other services available there. And there's shelter homes for the survivors. We try to tag them with that shelter homes as well. And we also utilize other referral systems like, for health, legal aid services, and so on. And here I would like to elaborate a bit more on the psychosocial support that we provide to the survivors. As I said earlier, we create Monobandhu, who are basically the volunteers from the community, and have social acceptance in their community. We don't push anyone from the outside of that community, any expert or anything. And what they do, they mainly try to address the survivor stress, trauma, isolation, and social stigma by listening to them with empathy. They also work with the family and with the broader community members in order to build a supportive environment for the survivors. It also helps in the social rehabilitation and reintegration. That covers the next point as well. And in the rehabilitation part, in addition to the psychosocial support, what we do, we try to provide livelihood support and social, whatever needed for social reintegration and inclusion in the local forums, and definitely in the Poli Samaj, structure. Here you can see some statistics, what our achievements so far. We have many other basically but we cannot show definitely everything here. But you can see, I will not read out everything here, but number is really, really very big. So we have really good achievements. And this is just to reflect on the sustainability aspect of our model. And what we mainly do is we link the community people with other BRAC programs, as BRAC is huge in Bangladesh, and they have almost every kind of interventions in the community level. So what we do, we don't try to do everything by ourselves. We link them up with other programs who have specialized, interventions and initiatives. For example, for economic empowerment, we tag them with the microfinance initiatives or ultra pro graduation programs. For legal aid support, we tag them with the human rights and legal services. For skill development, we tag them with the skill development program, and so on. So we do that so that we can have kind of sustainability of our initiative in that particular community. Now, whatever I said up to that slide, the previous slide, this is so far of what we have done and have been doing since till 2020. From 2021 and onwards, we have a different strategic shift, and the shift is from the countrywide coverage with equal effort in every upazila, ward or UN level. We are shifting to 20 districts with very intensive concentrated effort, and the rest of the region will be we will have light touch approach. Why is that? Maybe you would like to ask why we are shifting to that modality. Because BRAC as an organization has decided to leveraging maximum effort of BRAC programs, and identified 32 districts where BRAC will have concentrated work with full energy as a whole. So we are aligning with that strategic shift of our organization and have come up with this two different approach. And as you can see, I will not read out everything due to the time constraint, but in the intensive approach, we will have our all our ongoing activities with, like, more effort and energy, and in the rest all the activities will go on, but with a bit distant, like, supervision, and we want them to be more independent, and they can carry on by their own. So, and we have already tested in 2020 in with like 50 Polish Samaj institutions, and we have seen that they can do it by themselves. And many of them have now government registration under the social welfare ministry as a not-for-profit organization, and eligible to get different services, especially the fund allocation. Government has small amount of fund allocation for the non-profit organization, and they can avail that. Here, we have some key learnings that maybe we can share with you. I cannot see. Okay, what I have done. So I will read out 2 or 3 learnings, but you can read out all the learnings, I think. So what I have learned, that local organizations like CBOs, especially if that is women-led organization, that are very essential for strengthening the voices, especially for the women rights, and to stop violence against women in the community. And if you have this kind of CBO in the communities at scale, you can go with any kind of interventions, and you can just quickly, like a magic, can operationalize everything. It's really easy, and we found it very effective during the COVID-19 response. Now we utilize these platforms, and really it gave us very strong, output. And community psychosocial support is really an important one, very useful for the survivors. And but in terms of sustainability, what we have found, though I have said that we have tested it out and we have 50 Polish Samaj who are sustainable now, but still, what we feel that this kind of platforms or community-based organizations really need long-term supervision and maintaining. It's not easy to step out from that community and let them do it by their own. And development programs may need to focus more on the sustainability of the empowerment component, rather than focusing more on the empowerment or sustainability of the CBOs itself. Like whatever effort you are making there, whatever the changes we are doing there, that is important to be sustainable. And for social cohesion in the conflict prone areas, community-led approaches are really very useful. And of course, at some stage, but we cannot confirm it when it is, these community-led platforms may find their own avenues, depending on their capacity and the need within that community. And then they can do their businesses by themselves. I am almost end of my presentation, and I would like to share one of the statement from our founder chairperson, Sir Fazli Hassan Abed, and that is, poor people are poor because they are powerless. We must organize people for power, and they must organize themselves. They must understand the dynamics of their communities in such a way that they can change their lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashwati. I think we've all heard about BRAC's work for a very long time, and it's really great to get this insight into how the program works. I know 8 years ago, I especially went to Bangladesh just to understand and study BRAC's program. So I see, Ritu, you had a question. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah,
Between
sure,
Anna and
Gunjan.
India.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yes, thank you so much, Shashwati. That was very nice. I had a question because I struggle with this. So,
Please.
what do you do so that the activities which communities are undertaking, they continue when the external people or NGO staff, when they withdraw? So, yes, you mentioned that you link them to different services, but what about their behavior, the actions they are taking, for example, violence against women? So I would really love to learn from you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. I'll try to answer the question, but I would also request Anadi, our directors, to step in if something I miss out or additional to share here. So basically, it becomes a practice. You need to have your interview in such a way and gradually withdraw yourself from the community so that they can become independent, make it as their habit, over the time. If you all of a sudden withdraw yourself from the community, there will be a gap. They cannot do everything by themselves. But if you plan your phase out, strategy and like step by step, you hand over the responsibilities to them gradually. For example, during the COVID, lockdown situation, we couldn't go to the field. Definitely, none of the development workers could do the field for a certain period. And what we did, we introduced themselves with the technology. We provided them the tools and initiated Polish led reporting mechanism. So they now have their tool in their hand, and they, after even having that new normal situation, they are continuing that reporting activity. We are not we haven't got back to our previous role to collecting the violence incidents. This is one thing. So you have to capacitate them and make them realize that what they need to do for themselves. This is one thing. But and another thing is resources, very important for any kind of institution at any level. So we facilitate them to mobilize the local resources so that they can handle and teach them how to handle the cash and other kind of things with them. So once they are confident enough and they know how to do that, they can uh, go by their own. But because by that time they are familiar with all the systems and processes within that locality, and though they know how to manage and how to allocate the resources for themselves, and how to do lobbies, how to maintain interactions with the local stakeholders. So these soft skills are really important to build in the community level. Maybe something more Anadi can add, because I'm
Thank
pretty
you,
new in community
Sashwati.
empowerment program.
Thank you, Sashwati. I did see that Anna wanted to add something. So Anna, if you want to add, and then if people have more questions, you can put them in the chat. We will get answers from the BRAC team, but then we will move to our next presentation. So Anna,
Okay,
if you want to add.
yes. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And definitely the question which is asked here regarding the sustainability of these community-based platforms is really a challenging one. But before we actually came into decision that we will allow them to run their institutions by themselves, we have done a pilot, as Shashwati mentioned, that we picked up 50 Kolli Samaj, and during last 1 year, particularly during the COVID period, we have set up a mechanism that they will do their monthly meetings. And from our side, we have one union level coordination forum So union means the lower administrative structure. Under one union forum, at least 6 to 7 Polli Samaj leaders come together quarterly. And there we actually use this platform for maintaining coordination and also discussing about their different challenges. And also we bring in different capacity building efforts that, like, we have developed one very simple software so that they can regularly report on. That means the activities they are focusing on, they will bring changes within their households or in the community that they will report, particularly reporting preventing violence against women and children. And also they will report how many resources they have accessed from different available resources, and how many women leaders they are representing in different local power structures. So the software we have taught them, we have trained them, and they have now smartphone or some tab, and they are reporting back there monthly. And quarterly we are bringing them together at the union level and discussing how they are going on. If they have any issues, then definitely we are going to visit them individually and providing support. And our experience is very positive. We thought that maybe their achievement will be less, but it was surprising to see our target we have set less, considering all the challenges, and also thought that during this COVID period, they won't be able to access different services and they won't be able to support other people. But surprisingly, they have done a lot. And our target achievement has gone double. And we actually tried to find out why did it happen. So it was really amazing to see. And I will say that this is the magic, or this is the uniqueness of community-led approach. If community is taking leadership, they can perform a lot apart from we are helping them to do. So I think that it's possible and they can do. And definitely they have, and we are there to support them quarterly. They are coming, and if any individual organization needs more support, we are going to them. Not we are now every month we will be going and helping them to do their own work. Yeah, the response is very positive. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anna. And I see a lot of questions and conversations in the chat. So if you or Sashwati, would like to look at them and respond in the chat, that would be great. Or we can collate your responses later and circulate them when we circulate the recordings, because these are really engaging issues, and these are issues that matter to all of us, and questions that all of us have when we, in our work every day. So would love to hear your experiences of them. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Vinay Aryaratna from the Sarvodaya Shramadana Movement from Sri Lanka. Again, I think Vinay's work and this movement really in Sri Lanka does not need an introduction. And I will let you describe what you do and how really you have been empowering and strengthening the communities to take charge of their development.
Thank you, Gunjan, and good morning to all of you. Good evening to John and other colleagues joining from North America. Let me first thank MCLD for inviting me for this very interesting and important dialogue. Let me share some slides with you. Okay, I hope you can see. So I will reflect on the Sarvodaya model, the Sarvodaya approach, and also our experience for more than 60 years now on mobilizing communities towards development, which we call as an awakening process. So I have titled my presentation, Development as an Awakening Process, the Sarvodaya approach. So the literal meaning of Sarvodaya, which is a word coined by Mahatma Gandhi, which is in Sanskrit, Sarva Udaya or Sarva Mudayam, awakening of all. And integral to our process is also a concept of sharing. That is sharing your time, thoughts, energy, intellect, wealth for the awakening process. So the pioneers of the movement, the founders of the movement, coined or used the two words and named the movement as the Sarvodaya Shramadana Movement of Sri Lanka. So the philosophy is based on development is an awakening process that has to take place, starting with the individuals, up your family, your community, rural communities, then urban communities, then the country as a whole, and the world as a whole, because we believe the interconnectedness of individuals and communities, and also the entire environment and the ecosystem. Then we see development as a process that is also encompassing 6 different dimensions. Even before we could talk about economic development, we think that we believe that spiritual development is of utmost importance. It's not just religion, but going beyond religion, really the fundamental human values that are very important, that keeps us together as communities and families. Then how we interact with others, the moral dimension is also important. Then also we live in culture, particularly in Asia, we have a very rich culture, and we are connected to the community through various forms of art, and we are connected to the nature. This has really added value to the quality of life of our people in this part of the world. And then only, unless we recognize that these elements are so fundamentally important to development, we don't believe that we can really have sustainable development in the form of having proper social development, economic development, and having a governance system, which we call political development, which is fair by all. So the movement approach is based on the recognition. This holistic or integrated approach is based on the recognition that we all are interconnected, and there are multiple determinants of poverty. And as Sir Abed mentioned in the last slide that Shaswati presented, the poverty goes with powerlessness. So we need to address powerlessness, and development is also, the process is important. That's why it's an awakening process. It's as important as the outcome. You can't separate. And we, coming from a predominantly a Buddhist tradition, we believe in the concept of well-being. It's not just the material fulfillment of your basic needs, physical needs, but also really the contentment and happiness and the totality of development. So the development process, as I mentioned earlier, in our model encompasses spiritual, moral, cultural, social, economic, and political development. So the movement started in the late 1950s, really as a movement. It was an initiative by a group of school teachers and students from a Buddhist high school in Sri Lanka, went to these villages to understand their real life, which they didn't know from what they were learning in the classroom. And Sri Lanka gained independence from the British in 1948. So this was 10 years on. Sri Lanka was struggling to find its own path for development. So this young team was really inspired by the Buddhist way of thinking, which was very inclusive, though Sri Lanka is a very multi-ethnic country with majority Buddhists, but we have Hindu, Christian, Muslim communities in the country. So, but we had a social fabric which was very tightly woven together as a nation. And after the independence, we were looking for the perfect development model that we thought of following. So basically, the idea was that people were made to understand that they could, even they were poverty stricken, there's a lot of strength in them, there are a lot of resources in them, they have a commitment, and if you organize yourself, then you can really start a journey towards fulfilling your basic needs. And then the organization later evolved to support that movement. So it was a movement which was later supported by an organization, and the structured form of the organization or the movement came little bit later, maybe after 10 or 20 years of the existence, start of the movement. So we go back to the fundamentals of Buddhist teachings, because we see that whatever we do are not really to help the people, even if that is to make them self-reliant. It's also a transformation process that happens within ourselves. So that in Buddhism, we call it the personality awakening through Brahma Viharas, or the 4 sublime abodes. That is, you start with loving kindness. this work, we have thousands of volunteers. Even the professionals who work for Sarvodaya are people who could earn maybe 5 times more than what they are getting as a salary or allowance from our movement, but because they are committed to service, and it's based on what we call karuna, metta, my loving kindness, and then you translate that into action, and which we call karuna, then you get a joy out of this work. It's not just the statistics of what we present in terms of our achievement, but it's really the altruistic joy that you get. Then we develop our personality by also understanding that you do not always get praise for what you do. You will have to face enormous challenges in doing these things. Now, Sarvodaya faced major challenges, even real oppression, violence. We had a war for 26 years in Sri Lanka. So it wasn't a simple journey, but each one of us who are part of the movement try to develop our personality to really face such situations. Then collectively, we have to share. It's based on voluntary sharing of your wealth, the time, your labor. So the movement was really promoting the concept of voluntarism and sharing. And again, the 4 Buddhist principles of collective or group awakening was the fundamental principle on which we organize the community. And then how you treat each other with respect. The language was very important. Then the activities that you engage are always have to be constructive activity, that will benefit the community collectively, not an individual or only a group of people based on their caste, creed or race. Then equality. So these are fundamental principles that were used to build the movement. So the group of school teachers and students and volunteers went from village to village, and at that time access roads was a very big need in communities. So the road building movement was really not just to construct a road that will help people to connect with the outside world, but also in the process they awaken themselves. So we had a motto which was called, we build the road builds us. I hope you get the message that is there in that slogan. So from 1958, the Sarvodaya has come a long way. With, you can see the founder in the middle, who happens to be my father. So I also grew up with the movement from early 1960s. And we have reached about 15,000 villages out of about 38,000 villages in Sri Lanka. Compared to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka is a very small country with only 21.5 million people and 38,000 villages, and we have reached more or less 2/3 of the villages in one way or another. Not that all the villages have come to a stage of advanced awakening or development, which I'm going to describe in a minute. So basically, we are the largest social development movement in Sri Lanka, which inspires a large number of people towards self-development. So in the initial stages and up until now, community mobilization through voluntarism it's the mainstay of our movement. Then satisfying the basic human needs, and most of the satisfaction of the basic needs come through local resources, although we do mobilize a lot of outside resources, but those resources are channeled in a way that does not make the community dependent on any form of external help. But we have a fundamental sort of belief that at the end, it should not be even movements like Sarvodaya which has to support the communities, but the state structures should ultimately be primarily responsible for providing the services that we may be providing in the interim or on a just to fill the gap. So at the end of the day, it's about, we are aiming about a structural transformation. We call it a non-violent social revolution. So many areas, many programs evolved out of practice rather than we identifying a need and then reaching the community. So it was on demand. We never sort of, unless we target certain communities whom we get to know that they are very impoverished, we always go to a community to present the philosophy of the movement when there is an invitation. So the movement evolved, and we are pioneers in the 1970s for establishing the concept of early child development in Sri Lanka, and providing the ECD services for more than 7,000 villages from 1970s to up until 1990s. Then it became a government policy, and government took over the ECD program in all the districts in Sri Lanka through the local government system. So some of the programs that we have experimented and initiated have become government policies now. Of course, they may not be functioning with the ideal sort of on the philosophical basis and the effectiveness that we would have envisaged, but it's a great achievement that we don't have to do everything ourselves, but now it's part of the main government program. So this is the most important sort of model that I would like to explain to you, because this is the mainstay of our Sarvodaya mobilization approach. And I must say that this model evolved through the practice, and this came like into being in the third decade in the early 1980s. So we realized that the community has to go through a gradual process of awakening or development. It can't happen in a very given time frame like a assembly line. So it has to be organic, based on the capacity of the community and the willingness of the community. So the most important thing is what you call developing the psychosocial infrastructure. So we have a lot of interactions initially with people coming together, working together on to satisfy a need, and we are not like bombarding them with a lot of philosophy, but it's just the simple notion that we can make a change ourselves. And build the confidence that they can do something by themselves. No, so once the community realizes through one activity that there's a lot that we can do if we work together, then we move on to what you call the social infrastructure development. There you need guidance to the community, capacity development, training. So we train community mobilizers, leaders, preschool teachers, community health workers. Now, depending on the need, today we have, in conflict transformation, reconciliation, ethnic harmony, religious harmony, interreligious act. So all those areas that we identify based on the need of a community or the larger geographic area, we train leaders to take responsibility. Then comes the most important thing, just like BRAC, we need to have a community organization which takes control of their development path. So that is what we call the Sarvodaya Shramadana Society. SSS is formed when they reach a certain level of maturity. Until then, we do not start any economic programs. It's a social mobilization process up until the third stage of village development. It might take anywhere between 6 months to 1.5 years or 3 years even to take a community to that level. Then we encourage them to register under the government law as an association. So they are a legal entity. There is a constitution. So the first time the people get used to the democratic practice at that level, at the grassroots level. And then they know how to open a bank account and how to enter into agreements with not just Sarvodaya main organization, mother organization, but with the government or private sector organizations. But most importantly, based on that development philosophy, then only we go into the income and employment generation activities through microfinance, savings and credit, enterprise development. So I will not go into details of that. Then hopefully in 3 to 5 years time, they would have gone a long way satisfying the basic needs, which we have identified as 10 basic human needs, and become a self-governing village, a self-financing village, which can not only be looking after the needs of their own villagers, but guide other villagers or even help through the surplus that they generate. So we are now connecting other villages so that if there's a surplus saving, they can share with the other community. So this is basically the model. And finally, we would like to reach the stage of Gram Swaraj or village self-government in Sri Lanka. So the 10 basic human needs are the environment. Now these were identified in 1970s, long before environment and climate change become global issues. Then adequate supply of water and sanitation, clothing, nutrition, housing, healthcare, communication, minimum supply of energy or renewable energy, holistic education, and last but not least, the spiritual and cultural needs need to be addressed. So this process, just like BRAC, doesn't happen organically, although the process has to be stimulated for it to be happening organically. So we have support structures that have evolved. So for the villages, we have the field operations division, which makes sure that the mobilization process is moving in a smooth way. And if there are problems, training needs identified, then how we coordinate with the company registrar in terms of getting their registrations and following up with compliance, because there are financial and governance compliance requirements. Then we have a Sarvodaya Institute of Higher Learning, which is providing training inputs. Then the technology division of Sarvodaya Fusion. Then we also have other specialized legally independent units at national level to support this process. I will not go into detail. So basically we have about 3,000 co-villages, which we call Gram Swaraj villages, which the villages which aspire to be Gram Swaraj, and the pioneer other villages connected to those villages, more or less up to 15,000 villages. Only about 5,400 are really registered as independent legal entities. So then to support this, of course, we have the traditional governance, management, and administration structures at a national level. So in terms of outreach, there are 25 districts in Sri Lanka, and we have development education institutes, as well as each district has a permanent district center with a co-permanent staff, and the others are all volunteers. So we have more than 100,000 volunteers who support at different levels, starting from village level up to the national level professionals. We are still a voluntary organization. So this holistic approach is, again, to summarize, really to satisfy basic needs, but leadership development. We really need catalysts at community level. And we have to always work within a democratic framework of governance. Now, we have a serious problem in our country. The past few decades, democratic values have deteriorated, and a lot of political issues are there, a lot of crises we have to deal with. But at least at the community level, up can we evolve an alternative system of governance for the country. And then this capital formation is very important. We don't look at capital formation at community level as only financial capital. Although we have one of the most successful micro enterprise programs, microfinance programs in the country, we believe that the capital has to be spiritual capital, where we encourage, from regardless of what religious background you are, to go back to the fundamental teachings and keep that coherence, and always reflect the inner dimension of your work and yourself, and connectedness to your own internal personality is very important. Then moral development, how do you share your wealth to whatever you have for the improvement of the society. Relationship building, we have had, as I mentioned earlier, a war in the country. For 26 years, a lot of people lost their lives and also livelihoods. Now we have to rebuild as a nation in this multi-ethnic society. Then only we have the financial capital. So just to highlight that we look at our economic development as an integral part of a total awakening process. So again, to remind from Buddhist teachings, we say that you have to earn a living in the rightful way, not destroying the environment, not exploiting other people, not by creating divisions in society, not by engaging in illicit trade. And out of the income, you only use 1/4 for consumption. You use two portions for investment and one portion for an emergency. So that is how the teachings are. So the current economic model, which is really going against this type of philosophy that we are preaching and practicing. So we have these negative elements of the current model, which is causing a lot of environmental degradation, and their motive is profit only, not human welfare. And it's only the approach is for the survival of the fittest. And there's unequal income distribution, which is reflected in the statistics of Sri Lanka, which we are trying to address. So there are a lot of disparities, and this system is creating paper money, not true wealth. So it's also loan and credit-based development, not otherwise. So we are focused on satisfying basic needs, promotion of renewable resources. It's a people-based approach and bottom-up development. Use of appropriate technology. We have pioneered the introduction of solar to information communication technology and so many other appropriate technology to the country. And through that also, based on savings-led economic growth, we are evolving an alternative economic model, which is not to create a few rich, but also not creating profit by destroying the environment or through illegal activity, but really working on social objectives. So this transformative approach also has to happen at individual level. So we believe that alternative economic system can only evolve if you yourself voluntarily give up wasteful lifestyle, and if you are motivated to share your wealth or intellect or whatever with others. And this is really important at the time when we are facing COVID-19. We have realized how important that this model of independent village communities relying on their own resources to survive and practice healthy behavior. Also, spiritual activities are not considered uneconomical. They are an integral part of economic development. And then we promote savings to circulate within the villages, not the savings to come to cities and big businessmen to borrow at low interest rates to for big mega projects of their own. So to conclude, the movement tries to make a change at the level of consciousness. We believe that unless individual and collective consciousness is changed, you cannot satisfy basic needs and have an economic system that is fair by all. You need to also have a power structure which respects human rights, which respects human dignity, where people have a say, the principle of subsidiarity, that their destiny can be controlled by them. So Sarvodaya has evolved, which I will not go into, I don't have time to go into details. Several independent entities specialized in different aspects of development, and dedicated staff who are also qualified and who are trained are working. But the binding glue is the empowerment process, which consists of spiritual, moral, cultural empowerment, social and economic empowerment, and political empowerment. So I'll finish by saying that our purpose is to build a just, sustainable, and compassionate social order that fulfills the basic human needs of the community through individual and collective awakening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ariratna. That was so inspiring. Just this morning, I was in a presentation, I was in a meeting with a group of organizations in Canada, and, they were asking the question that, is CLD really being reduced to a project-based approach now? Because that's all we seem to be hearing about. And I think this is a perfect example of how it is not really, and, how it is organic, how it is a movement, and how it can be and bring about change. So thank you. I now want to, Saida, if you want to unmute, I know you had a question or a comment for Vinya.
Thank you very much, Gunjan. First, I would like to thank John and you and all the friends who I see in front of me for giving me this opportunity to be part of this very, very, it's like an eye-opener, this meeting, because I haven't really attended any before. I want to say at the outset that, listening to Shashwati and listening to the whole BRAC story, after having recollection of meeting Fazle Abid Sahab some many years ago, and then the thrill of looking at Vinya Aryaratnam, because my recollection of his respected father, I think, is the time that he was involved with Mahatma Gandhi in the Vardha scheme. This is before, Sarvodaya began, and people like our former president, Dr. Zakir Hussain, who was actually the author of the Vardha scheme, which had to do with basic education, for those who may not know the word. I just want to say that what the two speakers spoke about resonates with a lot of what I have been thinking as an individual, and my interactions with exactly this kind of a community-based work that goes on within my context. The whole idea of interconnectedness, of spiritual, moral, these are things which we don't always place right in front of us. But all of those ideas of meti and karuna, we need to get that very much centered in our thinking. And to me, I have learned a lot, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I think this whole idea of Gram Swaraj is so embedded in our consciousness. And we have also seen it unfolding in front of our eyes and then sometimes retracting. And it's a thrill when you can, as Vinaya said, that it's a thrill when government actually decides that they are going to and make it a government policy. So then we can sort of watch that, and we are not very 100% happy with it, but anyway, it's a beginning. So I think that the idea that people are poverty stricken but have a lot of strength, I think that idea is so strong. Later on, we can involve within whatever little I can help in terms of bringing people from this part of the world into this whole movement that you and John called it a movement. It is a movement. It's not a project. And I think there's a lot to learn and a lot to benefit. So I just stop here and thank you so much. Over to you, Gunjan.
Thank you so much, Saida. And I think you beautifully actually summed up, the two presentations, and also what we can take away from them. If anyone has any questions for Vinaya, then please raise your hands or put the questions in the chat box. And then also the earlier questions that we did have, we will take them to the speakers and see if they have anything to, if they would like to respond to them. So are there any questions, comments, anything? This is, okay, Masudur, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Well, thanks. I think it's really inspiring. So, and this is really great to hear that this model is successfully continued for more than 5 decades. So my question is how the donor engage. Sorry, I'm with my kids now. It's holiday here. So yeah. So my question is how the donor engaged with the model. Is it partially or fully? And how the financial issues solved and engaged the Sarvodaya at the village level or at the central level? So that's what I want to know. And again, it's really inspiring.
Thank you, Masdur. Actually, it's a very good question. Now, these village societies, when they reach that level, they are, for all intention and purposes, they are independent, legally independent, but it's a mix. I can't say that it's centrally coordinated, but because they follow the Sarvodaya principles and also use the word Sarvodaya, then there's a moral link and a moral obligation. But for legal purposes, they are for managing their finances. The main organization has no say. They have to comply with the constitution, which is only their constitution, that applies to the village society. And then they have to file, returns, what you call the financial reports and the annual reports to the company registrar. But it's centrally coordinated because we are more interested not just on the compliance part of it, but really to see that the village needs are fulfilled, the village unity is created. So to that extent, through our district centers, because even the district centers are also quite independent. Because we don't want to have a hierarchical, very strongly hierarchical organization. So the district coordinator, the team and the volunteers are free to engage with villagers and support them. So primarily, I would say it is managed by the village society based on their own needs, by their own elected leaders and the membership. but they are also supported through the district center by the central management mechanism of Sarvodaya. I hope I made it clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if you have more questions, then please keep putting them in the chat. We will carry the questions to the speakers, but I know we just have 12 minutes left. And so I do want to bring up a couple of issues that we've been thinking about, and we would love to get people's thoughts on here, which is on, so we now have our Asia call for the movement, but we've been thinking about, should this be a monthly call? What time works best? And what should this platform do? We heard in our last call when we had a few people come in, it wasn't an Asia call really, but we had brainstormed with a group of people on what would they like to do during these calls. And the thing that had come out really strongly was this need to learn and share experiences. And that's really why we started today with these two great organizations who have been doing some really pioneering work on community-led development. But we want to hear from everybody who's here that what would you like to do with this space, with these 90 minutes where we can come together? What form and shape would you like it to take? What would be most useful? And then we can also share some ideas of what's been happening with the movement, some of the activities and kinds of things that we do on the calls. But if anyone wants to come in, if anyone has any suggestions, ideas. Silence.
Gunjan, until someone asked the question, I think there was another part of the question from Masudur, which I did not answer, the role of donors. So donors have been involved, but we have been having, quite a bit of experience with donors. We have even, said no to donors, and we went through a transformation at one level in the 1990s. But you are right that some programs need to be funded externally, but on our terms now. Earlier, they identify certain priority areas and then sometimes even push us, but now we have a different relationship. We are equal partners. Of course, we have to make adjustments because the donor policies are based on other considerations as well, but we are extremely careful. But I can say very confidently that the current donor support is based on the respect for the kind of this model and the values that we promote, and we can afford to lose donors. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinaya. And there are questions coming in for you, so we will bring them to you and hope that you can answer them so that we can circulate the answers, because I think it is a very fascinating and a very inspiring model for sure. I did see a suggestion from Ridula about, what should we do on these calls and how to carry it forward. And Ridula, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, hi. So I was thinking, because I really like the conversation today and I'm very new to this field, I would really love to have kind of breakout sessions or, kind of hands-on workshops that can actually maybe help me and people like those who are very new to this kind of community-led development initiatives. I think they can get more insights from the ones who are much experienced in this field, and maybe through stories, as we had discussed, we can learn more in this particular field. Yeah, so this was my suggestion, and maybe some case studies to work upon, maybe that would help.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mridula. And absolutely. So just to, and John, if you can share the last slide, but I did want to just flag that we have been we do global calls on a monthly basis from the movement. And on the movement website, we do have a lot of resources, case studies from different organizations. This will also go up there, these case studies, but absolutely hear you on the breakout groups and the workshops, because there is so much of rich experience that all of us can learn from each other. And, also Frank, I think brought up this issue of there being certain themes which are definitely coming up. And maybe one of the things to explore is to take up some of those themes, like this whole question of sustainability, this whole question of funding. So there are themes in it, and maybe we can look at some of the themes on different calls to see how do we address them, how are different organizations addressing them, and would that be applicable in our context? So absolutely. And then, so I see other suggestions coming up. Edwin John talks about an open space approach for our meets. Edwin, I am going to give you the mic in just a minute to talk about it. And then I see other suggestions as well as I read them. But I wanted to quickly flag a few things that are happening and that are avenues for engagement. We definitely, if you haven't seen the MCLD website, please do go there, mcld.org. We have to shift there. You can subscribe to the newsletter. You can see the case studies that we have, the presentations from organizations from different parts of the world, sharing some of their stories, their journeys, their methodologies. We do COVID calls. Since April last year, we've been organizing monthly calls on COVID-19. The difference from other COVID calls being that these COVID calls are open spaces of sorts where we do a lot of breakout groups, and organizations, local organizations come together to brainstorm on how do we need to adapt and change our work to respond to the crisis as it is unfolding. So it's not about COVID in general, it's about adapting our work to COVID and what we can share and learn from each other. And we've seen some really rich experiences of cross-learning happening there, be it on the question of vaccines or be it simply something on, like what does this mean for our work long-term? Has this really shown us that we don't need to be, in communities, that the communities themselves are actually the best responders. And all we need to do is ensure that they can, they have all the support that they need. So we have monthly COVID calls. We have a collaborative research project going on, which we will talk about in one of the calls and we'll explain that, but it's a group of organizations. It's unique in that you had people from 23 different organizations coming together voluntarily without any funding, working on looking at the impact of community-led development, on looking at the different ways organizations are doing community-led development, and on creating those tools. Again, they are on the website. You're welcome to join us in that. In May, we are organizing a dialogue, a global dialogue on the Food System Summit. So some of you may be aware, and if you are working on anything with the Food System Summit, then please get in touch. One of the challenges we found has been that the Food System Summit does not have anything to do with community-led food systems. There hasn't been any mention of community-led food systems, of communities, of their, of what they need and what they want. And we want to make sure that that input goes into the summit. So we are organizing a dialogue around that in May. And then finally, if you want to be engaged, there are national chapters, which we have in different in different countries. If any organization or group of organizations believe that they can have a national chapter, should have a national chapter, that's another way of engagement. Again, as we have these monthly calls, we will try that on every call, we introduce one of these aspects of the work, because it's kind of, these are all things that I'm just throwing out there. John's spoken to a few of them, but they are very new. So I just wanted to put that out. And Edwin, if you want to speak a little bit about, maybe in a minute, talk about what is the open space concept that approach that you're talking about. Edwin, you're muted.
Something similar to the one that we are already doing. But what we found, we had a kind of a special app that could include a lot more people and have very many break rooms. And there is an app for that. We tried that. In our last meeting, somebody introduced that. We found in 2 or 3 successive meetings, very good participation, because people choose their own interests and identify propose their own topics, then they work on that, and they are very happy about it. I finished. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Edwin. And I see a lot of good ideas. I see something from Manisha. Felina, you wanted to speak, so please unmute.
Yes, Gunjan, thank you. First of all, I would like to confirm to everyone that participating in MCLD various activities is really helpful, especially if we are into this type of development work. Now, just in terms of process, I'm thinking, since we are also gearing towards chapter building, so I'm just thinking across our participants, we can ask them for them to share their various or major concerns in their development work. Why don't we create a sounding board to that? And then second, a creation of a committee who can brainstorm or make a program out of it. And then third, let us continue with this series of sessions like this where we can hear more successes. It's really very good to hear, very, very enlightening to hear about the presentation, because we were able to, me personally, I can relate because they presented some commonalities, some differences, but it's good to hear about challenges at the same time and what are the corresponding strategies. So for future, shall we say, sessions, why don't we have that? Because we are also looking for additional, perhaps we have the same challenges where we can relate with each other and we can learn from each other as well. So, and then at the same time, then let's talk about formalization. I do not know if we need to formalize. It's, chapter building could also be an evolving process. So we relate with each other based on our issues and concerns first, and we respond to that. And then finally, let's all confirm, yes, we all need this. And this is very helpful. There are lots of things that we can get from this, value added, and so forth and so on. So we would like to continue with this one. So let's make talk about additional systems on how do we manage this thing. I do not know with the rest. Yeah.
No, thank you, Felina. That was very helpful. And I see that Ritu has shared out a meeting that's going to happen on the 25th of March. So there is there are links to a webinar there. Also, if you believe that there are any, if you come across work or meetings, especially around community-led development that is happening that you feel others should know about in the group, please share them with us so that we can share them more broadly, and have more people involved there. Please feel free to invite people that you know or who you think are committed to community-led development, believe in community-led development, or should believe in or should be influenced to, to believe in community-led development, to come here. Because I can tell you now, having attended these calls for 2 years, that there is nothing that convinces you on the need for CLD or the difference it can make as attending these calls and just listening to these really inspiring experiences from all over. Yes, at times, there are problems, and we discuss those as well, but it is really, really inspiring. So we are at the end of our time, and I know for people, at least in North America, it is really late, and I know for people in Asia, it's time to get on with their day. Unless someone has some really pressing comments that they would like to make, I would like to thank our speakers, Sashwati and Vinaya, really for sharing the stories and making this such a rich experience for all of us, for sharing the journey and the models. We will, we've been collecting all the responses that people have sent on the chat. We will send out the questions. We will send out circulate the answers, and we'll definitely take on board each and every one of the suggestions that has come here around what do we do about this how do we take this forward. And you will hear from us soon about the next meeting and the next steps. So does anyone have,
Yeah, thank you, Gunjan and John. And others, all the participants here for having us on board and listening to us. It was really amazing to share our work with you all. Thank you. And hope to see you again and meet virtually again, maybe.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shashwati. It was great having BRAC with us tonight and having Sarvodaya with us tonight. And Gunjan, thank you for excellently and so graciously facilitating us all tonight. So as she said, we'll get, I rather expect we'll do same time, same next month on the 14th, most likely. But please do be in communication with any suggestions. I completely agree with Gunjan that we will take them all very seriously because, Gunjan, Asia is a majority of the world. And as Asia goes, that's how humanity moves forward. So I really appreciate all of you joining us tonight. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
So we have a tradition in MCLD that any of our meetings, we all unmute at the end and say bye together. So if people want to unmute and say bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye, Intaz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
God
Thank you,
bless.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.